For me, it's a constant struggle to work out and not work out, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it too either, but I can definitely say the days that I actually do start my morning with a proper workout, or even just running for a mile and a half, those days are 10 times better than days where you're just lazy. Because if you don't start off active or start off on the right foot, for whatever reason, the rest of your day is going to be completely lazy, or you're just not going to want to feel like doing anything.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jared Bass with Mark McCann, and you're listening to Triumph Every Day. We discuss the journeys that shape the lives of our guests and how it brought them to where they are today. And today's guest is Sagar Patel. Did I say that right?
Yep,
Patel?
that is. Good to be here.
Thanks for coming, buddy.
Anytime.
Appreciate it. I've known Sagar for a couple years now, but we were just having a discussion not too long ago, and we were talking for over a couple beers and Harry Potter trivia that we were not very good at.
Oh, yeah, no.
Maybe one best team name, not very PG-13, but if you know anything about Harry Potter, Slither in My Pants.
Mm-hmm.
That's
It's a good name. It was a good name.
It was a good team name.
Yeah.
But we were talking a little bit, and I just thought your story was pretty cool, pretty compelling, and I just wanted to tell it. So maybe just tell everybody kind of who you are, where you're from, and we'll kind of dive in from there.
All right. So I guess obviously I'm Sagar Patel. Born and raised in Savannah, Georgia. I'm actually of Indian descent. And I don't know. Love living here. I moved up to Ohio roughly around six and a half years ago, and then invested into a liquor store up here, and then just spread like wildfire after that.
Spread your wings.
Yeah, spread my wings. So, I don't know. I graduated from UGA. My parents went bankrupt when I was 17, so I believe it was towards the end of my sophomore year of college. And being a traditional Indian, being the oldest son, I had to pick up the extra weight on that aspect. And so, graduated college and started a liquor store in Port Royal, South Carolina first, and then two in Miami. And then what brought me to Ohio, and here is a liquor store near Oxford, Ohio. It's actually in West College Corner, Indiana, about 2-3 miles west of Oxford, Ohio.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason I wanted to bring you in here. First question, being Indian, obviously I'm very white. Do you get, because being basically of darker complexion, I'm sure depending on who you're talking to, you probably get like Cuban, Mexican, maybe half black,
anything brown,
yeah,
Latino, yeah. Sometimes I've actually never gotten black before,
no?
But it's always Latino or Indian, obviously, and I just go ahead and just make myself known just by my accent, just kick it on and off, like, hello, okay, I'm Indian, you know?
That's amazing.
So just go ahead and mark my territory right there, that this is my descent.
That's
know where I'm coming
amazing.
from. Oh, Middle Eastern too, have that a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a question. You said you were 17 years old and a sophomore in college.
Yeah.
So were you gifted as far as, grade? Did you get to skip some grades? Is that how it worked in Georgia, or?
Geez, no, I did not skip any grades. Well, I skipped a semester or two when I was in high school because you could take those AP classes and take college credit in high school. Mm-hmm. So I think I skipped one semester, and that was about it.
So you just started young?
I did. I started earlier than normal when elementary and all that other stuff. So then went through just a normal thing.
I was just curious because I feel normal American high schools were 17 or 18 when we graduate. So 17 to be a sophomore in college, that's...
Yeah, I did start school a year earlier than normal.
Okay. Cool.
Or elementary school.
Right.
What? How many family members or how many kind of siblings and things like that do you have?
So I have one younger sister. I guess back then when I was there, my parents, obviously I was taking care of them, and my grandparents. Right now, currently, my grandfather passed away. So right now it's just my grandmother, my parents, and my younger sister. Mm. So I guess what you're trying to get at on that aspect is, yes, being the oldest son, we are supposed to provide college tuition to all of our families as well.
Wow.
So when I got out, and throughout the past 6 or so years, my sister put her through college, and she just got into Duke University for physician assistant program. So
I've heard of that.
I will
That's
be.
cool.
Yeah, I've heard that's cool. Is that new? Is it, no, that's exceptional, man.
Can you get us basketball tickets?
I
is
can
that too
ask
early
her.
to ask,
I
or-
can ask her.
What's it like being 17 and going, oh wow, I have to take care of my family now?
I'm an adult.
It was extremely tough. A lot of arguments with my parents because I see all my friends having fun and things like that. And then through the Indian culture, obviously being the oldest son, you had to. I mean, my father wasn't making any money just from here on, and whenever he can get a job here and there. So previously back then we had a hotel, and he's good with construction, so he would go off and do construction handyman stuff in the meantime. So, and then me working 3 jobs, trying to do undergrad school as well. It was very tough. Did not have a life and did not sleep whatsoever.
Yeah, that seems very kind of you're thrust into adulthood.
Yeah, it was taxes. Yeah, knew about how to do my taxes in college and stuff like that people would usually start learning after their first job or so.
Well, and the crazy thing is like I don't want to say the word lucky, but at the same time you're setting yourself up for success later on in life. How many people are just, it's like, why do I need to know geometry when I can't, I don't know about taxes or finances or how to balance. Like, that seems like it should be something that's taught way earlier on than.
The funny thing is, I would so agree with that. Like,
Yeah.
I wish I would have known that, and I don't know, maybe it was a self-drive to actually learn that kind of stuff, but I think that should definitely be added to our education system on just how to live a normal adulting life, per se,
Yeah.
rather than geometry.
Yeah, Lauren, I told Mark, Lauren, I just paid off my car. We're very blessed to be able to do so, but it's like one of those things that I wish someone early on would have said, hey, if you do this with your car, it's going to put you underwater for this many years, because you don't know.
Yeah.
And you get thrust in these situations. I know Mark's dealing with student loans and things like that. When you're signing your name on the dotted line and no one's really explaining, hey, this is how this works, and you're, 18, 19 years old doing this, it's like, wow, it would have been really helpful if someone would have been like, red flag. Hey.
Yeah. No, it definitely was. That was one thing is that throughout undergrad I was paying for my entire college, and luckily my sister and I are about 3.5 years apart, so she was never in the same grade level that I was when it comes to, I guess, high school, college, middle school, that kind of separation. So I paid off through mine, and then afterwards, taking out a loan was a big doozy when it comes, because we didn't have anything at that time, and to start up these businesses, you needed some sort of capital. So took out a loan. Luckily, I am blessed to have such a family who can provide that loan for me, and that's the only reason why I got it. So, and then started it from there. But it would be nice in the education system to have, like, if you would start saving right now, how much you can be better
Right.
off or well
Compounding
off.
interest
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
different things like that. Yeah.
So what does it look like to start? When did you actually start the whole process with like liquor stores and things like that?
Funny thing is that when I was in 17, 18 years old, actually I think I was a senior in undergrad when I did, is I actually took my dad's name and invested into a liquor store. The first liquor store I had was in the Port Royal, South Carolina. And at the same time, I bought a property in Miami using my dad's credentials. He gave authorization for it.
Did he know?
He knew. So the funny thing is, he knew about the Port Royal, South Carolina liquor store, but he did not know about the one in Miami, and the property. So I got the one in Miami, the liquor store in Miami, and the property in Miami as well. But he didn't know about those two until a year and a half later. So because I was too young,
And hopefully they
obviously-
were profitable by then.
Oh yeah. So actually, the funny thing is the Miami liquor store is our most profitable one. That's our bread and butter. But yeah. So with that, and that's how we started it. And then from then on, once I got done with undergrad, I was just constant driving back and forth between the two. So I actually lived in Daytona, So I would have like a 7-8 hour drive down to Miami and like another 6 to 7 hour drive up to Port Royal, South Carolina. So
why'd you pick Miami? With knowing that's the
location.
Yeah.
Well, anything with the business is all about location,
Sure.
right? So when a property opened up right up on South Beach, that's location. So, and back then, this was what now? 12, 15 years ago now or so. Back then, the property value was extremely cheap compared to what it is now. So now it's just, right now it's kind of sleazing away and just doing nothing for the property itself. With the liquor store itself, that's what was the main investment at that point. So unfortunately, the owner who sold the liquor store also was selling the property. So therefore, you had to buy both, if not none. So that's why I got it.
Gotcha. A little package deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the logistical kind of inner workings of even starting something like that? Obviously, you're dealing with different states have different laws.
Correct.
You're dealing with, we talked about kind of your inventory, right? It's gonna depend on where you're at. What you're buying.
So the logistics of it is mainly I got lucky with the Miami store because it was a small store. The building itself was a lot larger, but he did not market it, nor did he stock the inventory well. So when buying a liquor store, you have to worry about either the property, either you're going to buy it, rent it, or so on and so forth, the building, maintenance, and all that other stuff itself, and then the biggest thing with the liquor store is its inventory. So luckily that inventory was relatively cheap, and all we have to do is work our way up on that aspect. So logistics of that is knowing your state laws. So once again, Florida being it's not a government or state-run liquor store community kind of deal like Ohio is.
You don't have ABC liquor stores?
No, there's no ABC liquor stores or anything like that. And there's no taxes where the state automatically takes a cut of the profit as well, like in Ohio. That's the other reason why I got a liquor store in Indiana. It's literally about 10 feet away from the border of Indiana and Ohio because I don't have to pay the extra sales taxes or profit taxes like Ohio stores do.
Yep.
Very smart. So you found the liquor store in Miami. Was that just like on a Google search, or like how's that come about?
Word of mouth through the Indian community.
Wow.
It's kind of funny how well networked in the Indian community is. For example, I was at the Subway right next door, a couple exit downs from work, and apparently so whenever I teach kids for music class as well, I usually interact with the mothers and never the fathers, because in an Indian community, the mother is the one who takes care of all the kids, and the father's interaction isn't as much as it is nowadays, especially in the past or the older generations. I didn't realize that I was teaching this guy, the Subway owner's son, for the past 4 or 5 years now.
Really?
Right, but I knew his mother.
Right.
But the funny thing is that he's always known of me. So that's, I guess, something with a generational gap where I haven't really kept up with the Indian community, but my father has. So whenever he talks around and his word of mouth, he's like, all right, just see if you know anyone who's looking for this. So all of his friends will ask their friends, and then their friends will ask their friends, and that's how we found all these different locations.
Wow.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
I will say, so I don't want to jump around too much, just kind of more of an observation, because again, you kind of threw out the accent, and like there's like the typical like the Simpsons, right? Quickie Mart and all that stuff, but it's kind of twofold here. We were talking, again, I'm going to jump around a little bit. We were talking about your last name being a farmer's name, and how in certain communities that can be looked down upon. And whereas I look at you as like you're living the American dream, you have multiple businesses, you have, and the same notion, like all those like stereotypical, Indian kind of Quickie Mart, 7-Eleven type things, like you're all business owners that are thriving.
Yeah.
And when as we dive deeper into entrepreneurship and making a name for yourself and carving out your own little piece of all this, like that's something that we strive for, whether we know it or not.
And it is absolutely, and once again, the reason why the stereotypical Indian is either into like gas stations, hotels, or liquor stores and that kind of stuff is because it is a very profitable business if you work it right and if you put in a lot of time into it, right?
Yeah. And they probably have a system down at this point.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Like, hey, so and so, you want to open a gas station? This is how we did it, and these things work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's as simple as supply and demand. That's the basic concept that you need to know when it comes to things like that. obviously there's a demand for gas and extra conveniences like candies and Coke and sodas and things like that everyone's going to want to have. From kids, from high schoolers, I mean, if you look at demographics, it's high schoolers all the way up to 40, 50, 60-year-olds. They're going to want their cigarettes and things like that. That's what we saw.
Everyone's going to get liquor, and everyone's going to need a place to sleep at night.
Yeah, so
you're covering bases that are like universal needs.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the through line is that work ethic. You know, and I feel
that's
that's what eliminates the majority of people in business.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when my dad was previously, when we actually had a gas station before we invested into the hotel, I would never see my dad because he would be constantly at the gas station just working. The only time I would ever see him is when my mother picked me up from middle school. We went to the gas station for an hour or two, and then we would go home. So my dad actually would open up the store. After my mom would relieve him, he would come take a nap or so, rest up, eat, and then go back to relieve my mom to go pick us up from school, my sister and I. Then she would come back, so then we would have interaction with my father, and then we would go home. And he would not come until he would close the store roughly around 11, 12 o'clock. By that time, majority of the days, we would already be in bed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's not normal. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's what people have to understand with people that are running those types of businesses. And, you know, it's what me and Jared are finding out here, too. It's like, oh, you know, sometimes we're opening up the gym at 5 a.m. and we're not out of here until 8 p.m. You know, and that's just the way it has to be sometimes. If we want to be successful, and we can't complain about it, we can't, you know, no one wants to hear it. But, yeah, so kudos to, you know, your father and for setting that example, and it's clearly something you're excelling at as well. So
Yeah.
So you are going back and forth between, kind of jump back to the story, going back and forth between two locations, and then did you say you have two in Miami?
Yes.
So how'd the second one come about?
So the second one came about in a different location. It was more in the suburbs of the actual, it's not actually in central Miami, it's the suburbs of that. So once again, it was word of mouth. When that one came up to sale, I jumped on the opportunity and I took it. So, and at the same time, whenever that happened, literally about 3 months later, the opportunity in Oxford, Ohio opened up. So at that point, I was actually deciding if my parents should continue working or not. And my parents were like, we're going to be way too bored because we've worked our asses off our entire life.
Right.
And the liquor store, the one up here in close to Oxford, Ohio, it's only open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. So that's a perfect like retirement kind of place, and they wanted a quiet community to live in. So I got that too. It was right next to Oxford, Miami University. It's a good location on that aspect.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about inventory, right? Where you can, that one, it doesn't have stocking. It's not so expensive because you can get, you know, Coors Light and Natty Light and things like that.
Exactly.
Versus the one down south where you said you've got, you know, some bottles of liquor that are $300-400 to
$3,000 or $4,000.
$3,000-4,000. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
yes.
$3,000 or $4,000 a bottle.
What kind of stuff are we talking here?
We're talking limited edition Pappies to specific type of vodkas to limited edition bourbons and scotches that you would never find in a normal liquor store. But for example, if you would go to Austria or Scotland or something like that, you would find a lot of those over there. But once again, clientele in Miami, they're very high class, if you want to put it that way. So they're going to want.
I think they are.
Well, yeah, they think they are.
I mean, they've been the Florence.
They got the money to spend,
That's
so
right.
I'm willing to provide it if they got the money to spend, right?
So obviously you're not running those in the sense you're not opening and closing the doors every single day. How do you staff something like that?
So, once again, blessed with family and good friends. The ones in Miami are actually managed by a cousin, my dad's cousin's family, actually. And then the one in Port Royal, South Carolina, it used to be ran, before we sold it, it used to be ran by a good friend of mine, but then I sold it to him, so now he runs that, or he owns that entirely. And then obviously the one over here is ran by my parents and myself.
Yeah, so that's obviously, it makes things I don't know, maybe you tell me, is it harder or easier the fact that they're family?
It's a very double-edged sword.
It's great if they're doing their job, right?
Exactly. But there are times when it's like, okay, well, you need to go to India, so all right, well, now I got to fly down there and live there for a week or two while they're out vacationing or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So But I mean, it is mainly good because you can have, especially if it's family members or friends that you can trust, because you can have that accountability and that reliability that it's going to be done and the store's going to be ran right.
Yeah, and again, there's probably some cultural differences there as far as like, hey, we're in this together. This is all of our livelihoods.
Exactly.
You don't, hopefully not having someone who you've got to worry about, taking from under your nose or something like that.
That's true. No, I mean, we've had to worry about that too with a couple of people, but I mean, that's life, isn't it? You have to learn on who you can trust and who you can't trust.
Right. So speaking of going to India, we talked a little bit. You are getting married.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
What's the whole process
look
like for that?
So a typical Indian wedding traditionally is supposed to be about 5 days long, with different ceremonies representing different things on different days. We are combining that into a 4-day weekend per se, starting Thursday. So the way that works, I mean, if you want me to go to the nitty-gritties of it, is day one, there's like a ceremony separately between the bride and groom at separate locations, where the family member is supposed to apply you with a orange type of paste. It's actually sandalwood paste, I believe. And that's supposed to make your skin all glowy and stuff. So that's during the day. The next day, there is a henna ceremony, where the girl has henna put all over and all of her family members, and there's a little big party for that thing. And then afterwards, the guy comes over. The third day now is the actual wedding ceremony. And then usually some people condense it down into this 3-day, which we're also thinking about doing, but either in the morning, depending on the astronomical times and things like that.
That's wild.
Right? Is when you're supposed to have your wedding. So if your wedding can be held in the morning, then usually you have a reception in the evening. If your wedding is being held in the evening, then the reception's the next day. And that's why it's that long. Then there's also another traditional ceremony, which is technically the day before the wedding, but in America, it's actually cut really short. Is traditionally, and during my culture, once again, we were farmers. So to host a wedding, you have to get a lot of water, and there wasn't a proper irrigation system. So all the ladies of the bride, since the wedding is held usually at the bride's town or bride city, all the ladies would go to the river with a bunch of buckets on top of their heads and fill them up with water to provide clean water for the entire wedding ceremony and for everyone over there. So now that has actually turned into a whole traditional thing, where that's part of another ceremony of right before the wedding.
All the ceremonies.
Yeah.
One of the things I found interesting was you telling me that having to make a special trip just to go get clothing.
Yes. Because if we buy Indian clothing, like let's say New Jersey, because that's the only places that, obviously there's a little India and they have a lot of Indian clothing stores over there. If we buy them from here, it's the same amount, or it will cost us the same as if we flew over to India and bought the clothes over there, because of the currency exchange, as well as the value of a dollar is a lot stronger than Indian rupees.
So you can basically fly over there, buy everything you need for the same price it would be to go to New Jersey and buy everything.
Correct. And over there you would have a better selection, and you can get things customized for yourself as well.
And how many outfit changes?
So for each ceremony, there's a different outfit. So there are 5 ceremonies, and there's a different outfit for the guy, at least, for all the different ceremonies. For the girl, actually, she has, I believe, 11 different outfits that she has to buy. Of those, 6 of them that she's going to have to wear. 3 of them are for the actual ceremony purposes as well.
That's interesting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I remember Lauren trying on wedding dresses, and it was like 3 weeks in itself, and I'm like, what's it
we
like
gotta
to
finish,
pick out?
We gotta finish all of it in 3 weeks in India.
Oh my gosh!
Within a 3-week span, we have to figure out first and foremost what kind of dress we want, and actually, it's actually shorter than that, because we would want to figure everything out within 1 week. So then the other 2 weeks they can tailor it and make it, so that you don't have to get it shipped afterwards, and you can take it back with you. So usually when we go on these trips, international flights, they allow you to have 2 bags. One of them's a normal clothes, the other one's just completely empty.
So you bring stuff back?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is wild. And I don't even know where to go from there. They're obviously not inexpensive endeavors as well.
Oh no, we're talking the average Indian usually costs around and this is an average household, about $120,000 to do the entire Indian wedding.
Wow. Intense.
Wow.
Is this is too much? You don't have to answer. If you and your bride met, do you guys know each other, or is it arranged, or?
No, it's not too much information at all. We actually met online through an Indian online, through actually our temple's online dating website.
Okay.
So it technically was arranged, but it wasn't arranged. But nowadays, the whole, I guess you're trying to lead into the whole arranged marriage kind of thing.
Well, part of the reason I'm at, for a little more context, we had an Indian gentleman recently started. I've been personally training him, and that was a conversation that came up between the two of us. So I guess I'm just a little more curious.
Okay.
But also, I know obviously it's a little more arranged marriage than most other countries. And then he also mentioned that the divorce rate is only like 2 to 3%. So the 98% success marriages, and I've found that fascinating.
Yeah, it's kind of astonishing because I'll just give you my family's background. So my grandmother and grandfather were arranged and married at the age of 11 and 12.
Wow.
My mother and father.
I didn't even know I liked girls
Yeah.
at that point. It was still,
kitties.
yeah, exactly.
So
like just finding out, like, oh, there's that.
Yeah.
It looks good.
And my mother and father. My father was 27. My mother, I believe, was 23 when they were arranged and married at the same time as well. The way the arrangement was set up is different between my grandparents' generation and my parents' generation as well. As because my grandparents, it's their parents that talk to each other. So my great-grandparents from each side talk to each other, and they set up the whole thing.
Sure.
When my parents got married, it was more on the lines of my dad telling his parents that, hey, this is what I want in a girl. I want her to have this, 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 and she needs to be this tall or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then the parents would go out and find all these girls for him and literally would come out and show him in picture. If he likes them, they would talk for a few minutes, and then if it's okay from there, then they got married. So
swipe right.
Yeah, swipe right. Pretty much. Nowadays, it's kind of funny because I see my friends go through this all the time whenever they also get arranged through their parents at least. Is their parents would show them a guy, and then they would talk to him for a couple of months or so, and then within, I would say, 3 to 6 months, they would have to say yes or no, you're going to get married or not, if they go through that traditional route. Now, obviously, that all is dependent on each person's parents. Right. And how are they okay with them dating or not? But
and how does that go with someone that you meet? Do you have to go and is it the same route as meeting someone that you're falling in love with, rather than just like, hey, here's Sagar?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess whenever you're set up by your parents, it is pretty much like, okay, you're gonna go to a neutral location. Either you can talk for a few minutes and that kind of thing. I remember one of my friend's cousin, she got arranged to a person in India. So she was actually raised in the U.S., born in India, raised in the U.S., went back to India. They talked, and they first met at the guy's house, and they talked alone for, I would say, about 30 minutes while the rest of the family was outside in the living room. And me personally, I just found that completely weird, but I mean, I guess that's how it was. But I mean, they talked for that 30 minutes, and then afterwards, it went off. They started talking even more, and I guess all the Skype and FaceTime because of the distance, and they liked each other to the point that they went ahead and got married a few months later.
Yeah.
So
very interesting.
I guess what I should say is that the cultural differences between the Western world and the Eastern world is that you are definitely taught to sacrifice and make a lot of compromises in order to keep everything in sync, per se.
I would say that's probably the biggest difference in why there's such a high success rate, because we have to, as adults, you basically have to learn how to do that after the fact. It's not instilled early on. Yeah. Right? And that's something that you learn, I think, after you get married. And you're like, oh, wow, this is a lot more give and take than it is than most people are even going to be able to recognize.
That's very true.
I would say that's probably 100% why there's such a higher success rate than most Western.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have a lot of success, so it's like they're setting that example. Yeah. Where a lot of American families kids are born out of wedlock, probably a lot more, et cetera. I mean, you can draw all the conclusions, but I think there's something really to be said about having that fundamental example of seeing your parents and your grandparents and generations before you stick together, so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So maybe, so what's your fiance like? What's she do?
So she is completely the opposite of me. I'm a very practical, logical, not so fun kind of person. She is a ray of sunshine. I can definitely say that. She is a little ball of fun, for sure. She is right now. She's finishing up her master's and trying to apply to physician assistant programs. So she's the funny thing is she just landed back from an interview in South Carolina for that program. So we'll find out hopefully soon if she gets in or not.
Very cool. Where would she be going to school?
That depends on where she gets in the next couple of months.
Okay.
So we don't know that yet, and that's the reason why we haven't picked a wedding date. It's because we're trying to find out that and
Base it around all that. Yeah.
The break schedules and stuff like that from there.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, that's very exciting and very happy for you. It's obviously a big step and huge undertaking.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the actual event is a much bigger undertaking than.
Yeah.
I didn't really do a whole lot. I know Mark didn't do a whole lot for his as well. Sounds like making international trips is definitely a commitment in itself. So what about you, man? Like, what makes you tick? Because obviously you're educated. You're running businesses. Like, what kind of things do you enjoy doing that kind of maybe outside of work?
Geez, outside of work. So the funny thing is, I really do like the outdoors. If I had time for it, I can go camping any day, all day.
Yeah.
I do make time twice a year to either go. So usually in July we go to a buddy of mine. He has a cabin on a lake in North Georgia up in the mountains. We'll go out there. There's literally no electricity whatsoever. Just disconnect from the world. And then in the wintertime, usually I try to make it, but I can't. I couldn't for the past couple of years. We go out to Colorado and go skiing or snowboarding, whatever you like. So I do like the outdoors, hiking and things like that. I love music. That's probably my biggest passion is music. I do play the piano. I've been playing since I was 6 years old, and I teach piano to kids at our temple here in Westchester every week.
What draws you into the piano so much?
I don't know. I just the funny thing is when my parents were trying to figure that out, they put me in dance class and all this other stuff. But as soon as I picked up music, actually my very first instrument was a clarinet, and I just had a knack and a talent for it. And since then, I've always just I just like melodies and listening to good melodies. Every single time a music piece comes out, or you hear Lil Wayne or whoever making music or whatnot, I never listen to the words. I only listen to the musicality, and if I like the musicality, that's what I like about it.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. There's something about the actual rhythm and the beats that are involved with it. I mean,
Exactly.
there's some pretty, honestly, if you really start listening to the words of most songs, they're absolutely horrendous, especially in your top 40, if you will. But the reason it's so popular is there's a catchy hook and the melodies is pretty good.
Absolutely.
One
of the reasons, actually, one of the only music genres I actually listen to the words with is probably jazz.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I've heard there's basically two types of people, how they process songs, and it's like you just mentioned, you're either into the beats, the rhythm of it, or the words. Because I'm one of those guys too, like, I don't even know if I could sing a whole song, front to back kind of thing. But, as soon as the first 10 seconds come on the beat, I can just be like, that's the song.
Exactly, yeah.
I think you're onto something there, but just usually, I don't know if that's like a left brain, right brain kind of thing or whatnot.
It could be, because my sister's the complete opposite. She memorizes words left and right to any song, which is kind of funny.
I always was very envious of those people who could sing and or they rap an entire verse. I find it amazing that some especially some of these people who are incredibly quick lyricists, and you're just like, how
can your mouth move that
how
fast?
does that even
how does it process
go from here to here? I can barely get through a sentence most of the time.
Mess up karaoke.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah.
Just,
I got a question. Maybe talk about if there is such a thing as a typical day. I'm always interested in if you have any habits that have led you to be such like a highly successful entrepreneur and so on and so forth? Is there like do you get up at the same time day after day, and what's a day look like?
Day look like, so first and foremost, I actually got inspired by my uncle on my mom's side. He's a physician, and he has a rigorous routine, and I kind of model it after him. So I wake up at 4:30, and from there, and I try to hit the gym roughly around 5:15 after getting ready.
I had to get up at 4:30 today, and I hated it. I just wanted you to know that.
I feel like that's the only time I can actually fit in my schedule to actually make the gym a priority. So the reason why I recently made the gym a priority, it's only been about, I would say about 2.5 years, is because my family has a history of heart conditions. And I've already had 2 open heart surgeries, 2 myself.
What?
Yeah. So that's...
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. We'll
Yeah.
talk about that too.
So 4:30, head to the gym around about 5:15. Get done roughly around 6:37ish. Get ready, eat breakfast, head to work. From work, I get off at around anywhere in between 4:30 to 6 o'clock, depending on the day. Come home, I would make dinner, study for about an hour or 2, or do some sort of work when it comes to the businesses itself. I'm also in the middle of prepping to try to go to MBA school as well. Or try to get an MBA, so it's either one of those 2 for an hour or 2, and usually I'm in bed by roughly around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. And then wake up, do it all over again. Weekends is laundry, prep, and meal preps.
So you're lazy.
Pretty much.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and it doesn't surprise me that you're pretty much nonstop all day, and that's amazing, man. Got a lot of things going on.
I you see those kind of like little, top 10 list of things successful people do, but generally speaking, they're all roughly within the same realm of they watch what they eat, they usually either read often, work out regularly, eat almost the same thing, day in, day out, because as you find a rhythm, you find that what works and what doesn't. Especially if you're an efficient person, you get rid of the things that don't work.
Yeah, so I guess the hardest habit for me is to actually just get my mindset to actually go to the gym. That was my biggest hurdle.
What finally did that?
So it was 2 things actually. 3 years ago, my grandfather passed away of a triple bypass, or a heart attack pretty much, and nothing worked. And then my dad had grandfather passed off a heart attack. My dad had a triple bypass a year later. On the exact same day, my grandfather passed away.
Wow.
So at that point, I was like, you know what? This cardiac thing is running in my family, and to try to avoid it, I better do something about it. Right?
Did they relate that back to nutrition?
It's all nutrition.
Yeah.
It's the Indian food. A ton of oil. Any single time Indian food is made of oil. And I guess that's one of my biggest downfalls is I love food.
We all do.
It's really interesting because we've had a decent amount of people of Indian descent come through our doors, and like every time we talk to them, they're just like, "This is how I eat," and I'm like, "It's
so wrong."
I was like, "You can't." I was like, "You have to make a choice." Is like whether you start eating something else. Like I don't know enough about Indian food to tell you what's good or what's going to be better, but I'm like, I can generally tell you that if you just look at the macronutrient content of most of those meals, it's way off of what you should be eating.
Oh, absolutely. And I understand that the reason behind why Indian food became Indian food is because obviously India is in such a very tempered environment where it's extremely hot. And back then there wasn't vehicles like there is now.
Right.
So you're doing a lot more physical work, and once again, like I said, all I know is from my cultural experience and coming from the last name of Patels, we're all farmers. So we all farmed back 100 years ago or so, right? So it was very intense labor of work, and if you're doing that kind of work, you need that kind of nutrients to sustain you. Now that stopped. Yeah. Right, the food hasn't changed, but the amount of work that people do definitely has.
I do love me some Indian food, by the way.
To that point, I think that's a global epidemic.
Yeah, you're right.
Because we're all, obviously with the internet and all of our jobs now are way less physical. We're automating,
everything,
farming, on a mass scale because we have more people to feed, and so I feel like that perspective is so important. And if you can. And obviously, you probably also have that perspective of you can break the chain of your, cardiac kind of episodes in your family and stuff.
It reminds me of that movie. The movie, I don't know if you saw that movie, Disney movie, Wall-E.
Oh yeah.
I have not seen it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what that movie was. It was like an underlying statement that
Yeah.
the world is going into obesity because everything is automated.
Oh,
To
yeah.
move everywhere, you had chairs to move in the movie. So
That's
Yeah.
one thing we really feel good about. What we're trying to do here is obviously get people off the simple way to put it is off the couch, off the carbs, and
absolutely.
get them moving and eating clean.
But and the funny thing is that when the days, so once again, for me it's a constant struggle to work out and not work out, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect at it too either, but I can definitely say the days that I actually do start my morning with a proper workout, or even just running for a mile and a half, those days are 10 times better than days where you're just lazy. Because if you don't start off active or start off on the right foot, for whatever reason, the rest of your day is going to be completely lazy, or you're just not going to want to feel like doing anything.
Yeah, lethargic.
Yeah.
I agree. So what kind of things? So if you're changing your diet, what kind of things are you incorporating? What kind of things are you leaving out?
So changing diet is cutting a lot of the Indian food. Parents, I love you, but I like the home packages that they try to send me. Since I live by myself, I told them to actually stop that. That was a couple of years back as well. Many other things is a couple of the changes is eating a lot of times. That was a big help, as well as eating the right thing. So in the mornings, I'm trying to go a little bit more carbish of the food. So I'd have oatmeals. I put my sugars into it and have fruits and make a smoothie out of all that. In the evening, I try to do semi-carbish as well as on that, and then lunchtime I try to do semi-carbish, and then in the dinner time I try not to eat any carbs at all for the most part. It's mostly like a salad kind of thing. That worked before. It was pretty well. The reason that changed from I would say about a year ago is because a year and a half ago I did meet Anjali, and at that point I kind of got lazy and had to focus on spending time with another person and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that's tough, right? Because you're bringing two personalities together where you have to. You are going on dates, and you're not going to be that. Oh well, I'm just going to have this instead.
Yeah.
Like you're enjoying yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. It's finding that balance, right? To where
Exactly.
And we deal with that a lot with, especially people with kids. It's like you can meal prep all you want, but your 4-year-old is not going to sit there and eat broccoli and chicken.
That's true.
And so then you've got the mac and cheese lying around the house, and you're like, well, that seems way better than what I've got prepared.
Not only that, and spending the extra 30 minutes to cook the proper meal rather than I'm just going to go over to some fast food place and grab some food.
So music and working out, and what other kind of things going to make you tick? As far as, do you read a lot? Do you?
I do read. Actually, I do a lot of audiobooks. Audiobooks is one of my biggest things, is because I feel like it's just the easiest way. But audiobooks,
easiest way to consume stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Mark forever was trying to get me to listen to Audible, and then finally I was like, all right, fine, and now I'm hooked. I walk the dogs, and it's like an hour, and you're like, wow, that went by a lot quicker without.
Anywhere you go can be a learning experience.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Grocery
this should be a little like tagline.
But seriously, you put it in your car, your grocery store, you're cutting the grass, whatever it is.
What kind of stuff do you listen to?
So a lot of it is a lot of business books that I try to listen to as well, to try to increase my knowledge on that aspect. The other things is I use audiobooks to try to escape from life too. So I am Indian. I'm a nerd, so I do listen to a lot of sci-fi stuff as well.
Oh, cool.
So books like the entire Halo series, I'm sure you've heard of the video game Halo, that kind of stuff, to Lord of the Rings, to I have read all of the Game of Thrones books as well. So
very cool. What kind of business books are you? Is there anything you recommend?
That's a tough choice. So I would say most of the business books that I actually read or try to listen to is kind of like the top guys, like Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, a couple of his books as well. A lot of their theories and a lot of what they're thinking on an actual like business person. Like, how do they think? Bill Gates, a couple of his books, those are pretty good. And mainly when I try to do audiobooks is I try to listen to, or I have an app on my phone that actually takes articles and reads it to you. So a lot of all the Business Insider,
cool.
Business Insider art magazines and stuff like that I listen to on that aspect.
Yeah.
What's the name of the app?
Jeez.
I need to know it.
I gotta find it.
You're right.
You're good.
We're at a podcast. No one's listening. Maybe they are listening still. I don't know. Yeah, I know that I'm listening to a coaching book right now, and Mark listens to, same kind of thing. Lots of business books, lots of ways that we can help our clients, whether it's just different training techniques, different ways to just think about people in general. Mm-hmm. And I think those are one of our biggest kind of assets is just shifting your mindset.
So it's actually called the Reader app.
The Reader app.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
I can remember that.
Yeah, I should be able to remember that, right? Well, very cool, man. So obviously you not only own a bunch of liquor stores and run with all that. What else is going on in your life?
Like I told you from the beginning, I'm actually that's pretty much it about my life at the moment. It's right now it's just tackling one thing after the other. Right now I'm focused on the MBA, the wedding, work, and now trying to get back into shape. What's
the main motivation, for the MBA? I mean, you're already, in a lot of minds, I guess, would think, oh, you're already successful. Like, what more do you have to learn, kind of thing.
Well, first and foremost, if you ever have that mindset, what more do you have to learn?
Right.
That right there is a very, very hard brick wall to stop you from being successful.
That's awesome.
Right.
Answer.
Second thing is, I graduated with a molecular biology degree, which kind of has nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. And everything that I've learned is through experience and through talking with other people and so on and so forth. So I kind of would like to have some sort of knowledge in the entire business realm and how I can try to expand it or what I can do to just further it, to be honest with you. Not only that, just having the MBA and some sort of business degree. Right now I'm working at Go-Go Meds and it's been great, but like I said, life may take a turn and you may need a safety net. And that business degree, when it comes to application, is just another thing that keeps, or I guess, makes you shine over other people.
Yeah, just constantly. One of the books I like is The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People.
Covey, yep.
And number 7 is Sharpen the Saw, right?
Yep.
So I feel like that's one that's just constant. It's forget who it was. It might be Hamilton. It's like you give me 5 hours to chop down a tree. The first 2 I'm going to spend sharpening the axe.
Yeah.
And it's
exactly.
It's one of those things. So I love that answer.
Yeah. And speaking of, we always like to kind of round things out. You basically just said it there, but we always like to round things out with a really simple question. It's just, what is your definition of success?
Constantly learning. That and having a positive attitude. That those two things is your mindset and the drive to continue to learn. Those two things, with that, you can probably conquer the entire world.
Yep. And only if other people would actually take that to heart. Unfortunately, I feel like there's some middle ground, but generally people fall into that camp or very much a victim mindset.
Yeah.
Whether everything is everyone else's fault.
Well, like I said, if you go into that mindset, then it's very hard to crawl out of that. It's very hard.
But you can.
You can.
And it just takes one good day, right?
It does.
And you just string them together, and before you know it, you got a week, and then you got a month. I think that's what's plaguing us right now is, to a certain extent, with the prescription medication and stuff like that, people, start having those bad days, and they just, like, well, I'm just gonna get on XYZ medication, and I'll just numb myself. And anyway, I'm not getting off.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you a good prescription for that is just surround yourself with good and happy people.
Yeah, right.
That is the actual prescription. I mean, that's something that did help me out as well during my difficult times. Is I had a good friend who helped me out through all of that.
Yeah, you are the person that you surround yourself with.
Yep.
Right.
100%. Well, man, can't thank you enough for
thanks a lot.
coming in today.
Anytime. Thanks
for making time.
Yeah, no, this was fun.
Yeah, we'll turn the camera off and ask you all the real questions. Thanks again for listening to Triumph Every Day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, and everywhere your favorite podcasts are found. Find us at TriumphStrength.net, on Instagram at TriumphStrength, and Facebook at Facebook.com/TriumphStrength. Thanks again.